his knowledge that neither Saddam Hussein nor Iraq was in any way connected to September 11th attacks, the President allowed and authorized those under his direction and control, including Vice President Richard Cheney and Louis Libby, who reported directly to the President and the Vice President, and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, among others, to pressure intelligence analysts, to alter their assessments, and to create special units outside of and unknown to the intelligence community in order to secretly obtain unreliable information, to manufacture intelligence, or reinterpret raw data in ways that would further the Bush administration's goal of fraudulently establishing a relationship not only between Iraq and al-Qaeda, but between Iraq and the attacks of September 11th. F. Further, despite his full awareness that Iraq and Saddam Hussein had no relationship to the September 11th attacks, the President and those acting under his direction and control have, since at least 2002 and continuing to the present, repeatedly issued public statements, deliberately worded to mislead, words calculated in their implication to bring unrelated actors and circumstances into an artificially contrived reality, thereby facilitating the systematic deception of Congress and the American people. Thus, the public and some members of Congress came to believe, falsely, that there was a connection between Iraq and the attacks of 9/11. This was accomplished through well-publicized statements by the Bush administration, which contrived to continually tie Iraq and 9/11 in the same statements of grave concern without making an explicit charge. Number one, and I quote, in brackets, if Iraq regimes continue to defy us and the world, we will move deliberately yet decisively to hold Iraq to account. It's a new world we're in. We used to think two oceans could separate us from an enemy. On that tragic day, September the 11th, 2001, we found out that's not the case. We found out this great land of liberty and freedom and justice is vulnerable. And therefore, we must do everything we can to secure the homeland, to make us safe, unquote. This from a speech of President Bush in Iowa on September 16th, 2002. Number two, quote, with every step the Iraqi regime takes towards gaining and deploying the most terrible weapons, our own options to confront that regime will narrow. And if an emboldened regime were to supply these weapons to terrorist allies, then the attacks of September 11th would be a prelude to far greater horrors, unquote. That's March 6, 2003, the statement of President Bush in a national press conference. Number three, quote, the Battle of Iraq is one victory in a war on terror that began on September the 11th, 2001, and still goes on. That morning, that terrible morning rather, 19 evil men, the shock troops of a hateful ideology, gave America and the civilized world a glimpse of their ambitions. They imagined, in the words of one terrorist, that September 11th would be the beginning of the end of America. By seeking to turn our cities into killing fields, terrorists and their allies believed that they could destroy this nation's resolve and force our retreat from the world. They have failed, unquote. This from a May 1st, 2003 speech of President Bush on the USS Abraham Lincoln. Number four, quote, we're in a new and unprecedented war against violent Islamic extremists. This is an ideological conflict we face against murderers and killers who try to impose their will. These are the people that attacked us on September the 11th and killed nearly 3,000 people. The stakes are high, and once again, we have had to change our strategic thinking. The major battleground in this war is Iraq, unquote. June 28, 2007, speech of President Bush at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. G, notwithstanding his knowledge that there was no credible evidence of a working relationship between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, and that the intelligence community had specifically assessed that there was no such operational relationship, the President, both personally and through his subordinates and agents, has repeatedly falsely represented both explicitly and implicitly, and through the misleading use of selectively chosen facts to the President, to the citizens of the United States, and to the Congress, that there was and is such an ongoing operational relationship. To wit, number one, we know that Iraq and Al-Qaeda have had high-level contacts that go back a decade, said the President. Quote, some Al-Qaeda leaders who fled Afghanistan went to Iraq. These include one very senior Al-Qaeda leader who received medical treatment in Baghdad this year and had been associated with planning for chemical and biological attacks. We've learned that Iraq has trained Al-Qaeda members in bomb making and poisons and deadly gases. Unquote. This from September 28, 2002, a weekly radio address of President Bush to the nation. Number two, quote, we need to think about Saddam Hussein using Al-Qaeda to do his dirty work, to not leave fingerprints behind. October 14, 2002, remarks by President Bush in Michigan. Number three, quote, we know he's got ties with Al-Qaeda, unquote. November 1st, 2002, speech of President Bush in New Hampshire. Number four, quote, evidence from intelligence sources, secret communications, and statements by people now in custody reveal that Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda, secretly and without fingerprints. He could provide one of his hidden weapons to terrorists or help them develop their own, unquote. January 28th, 2003, President Bush's State of the Union address. Number five, quote, what I want to bring to your attention today is the potentially much more sinister nexus between Iraq and Al-Qaeda terrorist network, a nexus that combines classic terrorist organizations and modern methods of murder. Iraq today harbors a deadly terrorist network, unquote. February 5th, 2003, speech of former Secretary of State Colin Powell to the United Nations. Number six, the Battle of Iraq is one victory in a war on terror that began on September the 11th, 2001, and still goes on. The liberation of Iraq removed an ally of Al-Qaeda. May 1st, 2003, speech of President Bush on the USS Abraham Lincoln. H. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report on whether public statements regarding Iraq by U.S. government officials were substantiated by intelligence information, which was released on June 5th, 2008, concluded that, number one, statements and implications by the President and Secretary of State suggesting that Iraq and Al-Qaeda had a partnership or that Iraq had provided Al-Qaeda with weapons training were not substantiated by the intelligence, unquote.